A shamed black girl transformed. The billionaire dance invite that changed everything. In a small, ordinary town, something extraordinary was brewing. 12-year-old Kiera Davis, a girl with deep brown skin and a shy smile, was about to turn the world on its head. She spent her days wrapped in hoodies, avoiding the spotlight. But beneath her timid exterior, there was a fire ready to ignite. One fateful evening, she received a mysterious invitation that shimmered like a golden ticket. A dance party hosted by none other than billionaire tech mogul Julian Grant. The entire town buzzed with disbelief. Why would he even notice a girl like Kiera? She thought about it. Her heart raced in anticipation, mixed with a pinch of fear. No one made a fuss over her. No one noticed the rhythm in her steps, the grace in her laugh. This invite was her unexpected chance to shine. But at what cost? As the sun dipped below the horizon, the air got thicker with unspoken questions. What if she didn't belong? What if the big city left her gasping in its wake? The dance floor was known to be the most luxurious in town, pulsing with bright lights and laughter. Yet, beneath the glamorous surface, whispers floated like smoke, stories of the lavish lives, the power struggles, and heartbreaks of the elite. Kiera imagined hands pulling at her, as if the crowd might swallow her whole. Her mind raced. The music could be her escape, her liberation, or her greatest nightmare. Was she truly willing to dance with the giants and risk everything she was? Moments passed slowly, the day arriving far too quickly. Her friends nudged her, encouraging, their eyes wide with excitement and envy. "You've got to go, Kiera. Just imagine." But all she felt was a churning in her stomach, a tension that threatened to overtake her. Maybe she was just a girl with a dream, lost in a world that was not hers. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As Kiera stood in front of the grand ballroom, the cacophony of music flooded her senses. She breathed deeply, feeling the pulse of the bass thump in her chest. The glittering lights seemed to beckon her inside, yet an icy chill gripped her heart. Would they welcome her, or would they turn away? The doors loomed like towering giants, ready to swallow her whole. Just then, a figure stepped into view, tall, poised, with an unmistakable presence. It was Julian Grant himself, his eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for someone. Kiera's breath hitched. Was it her? Did he already know her name? The moment hung heavy in the air, charged with possibility. Kiera felt herself draw closer, an unseen force pulling her into the unknown. What would happen next? Kiera took a trembling step forward, the rhythm of the music resonating through her veins. Each beat took her deeper into a world that felt foreign yet tantalizingly close. The lights glimmered like stars, sparkling like hope or a cruel mirage. As she stepped inside, the crowd swirled around her, faces bright with gleaming smiles and designer outfits, but for Kiera, it felt as if time had slowed to a crawl. Julian was still scanning the room, his striking blue eyes locking onto hers. Her heart pounded, a wild drum that echoed in her ears. What was he looking for? Why did it feel like the entire world was watching? She forced herself to breathe, to push down the anxiety rising in her throat. The laughter and chatter faded into the background as she moved, almost instinctively, toward the center of the dance floor. Is that her? A whisper floated nearby. It was a sharp, cutting voice tinged with disbelief. Kiera turned her head slightly, her stomach dropping. Two girls, clearly from the upper crust of society, smirked as they pointed her way. Their perfect hair and designer dresses only boosted her insecurities. Kiera gulped and tried to shake it off. She remembered what her mom used to say. "Confidence is the best outfit. Rock it and own it." Shifting her weight from one foot to the other, she fought the urge to hide. Focus on the music. Just dance. Then, suddenly, the music shifted. The pulsating beat turned softer, inviting. And then, a crescendo of energy surged through the room. Julian stepped on stage. The crowd fell silent, waiting. His presence commanded attention as he leaned into the microphone, his voice smooth and engaging. "Thank you all for being here tonight. We're here to celebrate not just success but passion." His gaze roamed the room, and Kiera felt it land firmly on her again, like a spotlight. "Tonight, we dance not just for ourselves, but for those who've dared to dream." Kiera's breath hitched. Was he looking at her for a reason? Did he see something in her that no one else did? Before she could contemplate, the music blasted back to life. The beat was infectious. People around her began to move, bodies swaying fluidly as they lost themselves in rhythm. Kiera's heart raced, louder than the thumping bass. She felt a strange sense of belonging bubble up, fighting against the doubts that threatened to consume her. Gathering her courage, she stepped into the crowd, surrendering herself to the music. As she swayed, something inside her flickered alive. Confidence surged, and all the years of hiding, of feeling small, melted away with each dance move she made. But just as the high began to lift her, a sharp voice cut through the rapture. "Look at her! Has she completely lost it?" It was the same group that had pointed her out earlier. A snicker rippled through the crowd, and Kiera's heart plummeted. The laughter felt like knives, and her spirit began to waver. Suddenly, a man approached her, a warm smile on his face. He leaned closer, confidence radiating off him, a stark contrast to how she felt. "You've got something special," he said, his tone sincere. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She blinked at him, bewildered. Why did he care? But before she could respond, he whisked her into the dance, giving her a chance to reclaim the moment. They twirled, and she became a part of something greater, laughter mingling with the music in a sweet symphony. But from the corner of her eye, she noticed Julian watching again, with an unreadable expression. Why was he still focused on her? As doubts crept back in, Kiera realized that she might be stepping into a battle far bigger than a simple dance. And what had begun as a night of potential was rapidly becoming a crossroads. As the music pulsed around her, she realized she had a choice to make. Would she step into the larger world and embrace the chaos? Or retreat back to the shadows from which she had just begun to emerge? Her decision hung in the air, charged with electric tension. What would she choose, and how would it change her forever? Kiera hesitated, her heart racing as the thrum of the music consumed her. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down, the piercing stares of the crowd like darts aimed at her insecurities. She glanced at the man who had twirled her into this whirlwind, his eyes sparkling with an unspoken promise that felt like a lifebuoy in a turbulent sea. "Go for it, Kiera," she urged herself, barely whispering the words beneath the beat. In that moment, she chose to dance. The music enveloped her. It was no longer just sound but a living, breathing force that pulled her in, encouraging her to move. With each beat, she twisted and twirled, surrendering to the rhythm as her insecurities slowly melted away. For the first time, there was freedom in her movements. She let herself truly feel the moment, not just the eyes of judgment, but the exhilaration of being alive and authentic. But then a shadow loomed closer. Julian stepped off the stage, descending into the crowd's swirling mass. Her pulse quickened, unease settling in her chest. Was he coming toward her? The laughter and whispers faded, replaced by a deafening silence in her mind. Could he feel the air shift? As he approached, a palpable aura surrounded him. People stepped aside, parting the sea of bodies like he was royalty. Kiana's breath hitched in her throat when their eyes met. This was not a mere glance, but a connection that rippled between them. He reached out a hand, and her heart thundered, not in fear, but anticipation. "Will you dance with me?" Julian's voice rang out, vibrant and inviting, breaking through the stifling tension of the room. The crowd melted away, leaving only the two of them, encased in a bubble of sound and light. His hand was warm against hers, sending shockwaves of exhilaration and a hint of disbelief coursing through her. "Me?" she asked, almost breathless, not quite believing that he had spoken to her. "Yes, you," he nodded, his smile roguish and genuine. "Show me your moves." In a rush of adrenaline, Kiana stepped forward. The dance floor was theirs. She lost herself in the moment, spinning and laughing as Julian effortlessly matched her energy. But then, just as euphoria washed over her, she caught a glimpse of the two girls from earlier. Their expressions twisted in contempt, their eyes narrowed as they whispered. Somehow, their derision crushed the elation she felt. Doubts pricked at her. What did Julian see in her really? She stumbled slightly, anxiety bubbling at the surface. But Julian caught her, pulling her back into the dance. "Don't let them dim your light," he said, now closer, his low voice seeping into her brain. The sincerity in his gaze shielded her from the barbs of sass and judgment directed her way. Kiana gazed into his eyes, and in that layered moment, she felt both exhilarated and terrified. Her whole life had led her to this very instant, a fork in the road dressed in sequins and beats. The music pulsated fiercely around her, a reminder that each rhythm could possibly define who she was meant to become. But as they danced, something caught her eye, a flicker of movement in the corner of the room. A darker figure lurking just beyond the crowd's periphery. What was he doing there? In the growing haze of exhilaration, Kiana's instincts screamed to pay attention. There was something off about him, something ominous. Little did she know, the night was just beginning to unfold its secrets, and the dance floor was an arena far from innocent. Would she unravel the truth lurking in the shadows, or would she be swept away by the allure of the sparkling world around her? The dance floor felt electric. Kiana swayed, her footsteps syncing perfectly with Julian's, but the lingering sensation of being watched clenched at her gut. The figure in the corner was still there, his silhouette barely visible, but she felt his gaze burn like a brand. Something wasn't right. Julian twirled her again, and she laughed, desperate to shake off the unsettling feeling. "We're unstoppable," he shouted over the beat, his enthusiasm infectious. Yet the eerie shadow tugged at the back of her mind, refusing to let go. She danced harder, but every movement felt strangely choreographed, not by her joy but by paranoia. With each spin, she cast quick glances towards the lurking figure. He hadn't moved, still perched against the wall, an enigma surrounded by revelers who showcased uninhibited bliss. Who was he? Why was he here? Then the beat dropped, and a hush swept over the crowd. It was as if the world paused, holding its breath. Kiana's heart plummeted. Was it the same tune, or had it shifted? "Wait here," Julian said, leaning in close, the softness of his breath sending chills through her. He slipped away, seamlessly melting into the throng of bodies. The warmth of his presence evaporated, leaving her feeling exposed. As the crowd resumed their chaos, her gaze returned to the corner. The figure had stepped forward, his identity emerging from the darkness, a man with sharp features and an air of danger that sent a shiver down her spine. He wasn't just lurking. He was looking straight at her, and the weight of his stare pinned her in place. She could almost hear the tension in the air. People continued to dance, unaware of the palpable shift. She took a step back, blending into the shadows, her instincts screaming to avoid his sight. But it was too late. Their eyes locked, and her breath hitched. He smirked, an unsettling grin creeping across his lips. Kiana's pulse raced, a war between fear and confusion simmering inside her. Just then, a commotion erupted nearby, a group of patrons laughing loudly as they spilled drinks. The distraction pulled her focus, but the man remained relentlessly still, as if pouring all his energy into her. The crowd as Joy felt muted a cacophony beneath an ominous veil. Then she remembered Julian. Where was he? Panic clawed at her throat. She had been momentarily hypnotized by dancing and laughter, but now the urgency to find him surged through her. Dodging through the throng, Kiana scanned the sea of faces, dread pooling at the bottom of her stomach. What if that figure had already scared him away? What if he was after something more than just a dance? Just as she reached the stage, an explosive sound echoed throughout the room. A single glass shattered on the floor, scattering glittering shards, like shards of reality. The music faltered and froze, the upbeat rhythm replaced by confused murmurs. Fighting through her racing heart, she turned back and spotted the figure moving, slipping through the crowd like a ghost. Somewhere, deep within her gut, a familiar knot tightened the instinct to chase. With newfound urgency, she pushed past bodies, desperately following the outline of his silhouette, the ominous chill he carried pulling her deeper into the depths of this dazzling night. But what awaited her beyond the flashing lights? What truth lay amidst the camaraderie of laughter and blurred faces? And would Julian still be at her side when she pulled the curtain back on the shadows lurking in vibrant colors? The crowd pulsed around Kiana as she weaved through the sea of bodies. Every beat of the music mingled with her racing heartbeat, creating a discordant rhythm that echoed her fear. Where was Julian? She felt hollow without him. Like a piece of her had been ripped away. As she drew closer to the figure, she could see the sly grin widening on his face, a wolf baring its teeth. With each step, the air grew heavier, thick with unspoken tension. He was moving like a specter, slipping between dancers, his eyes never leaving her face. "Julian!" she called out, her voice drowned by the chaos. The floor vibrated as people continued to laugh and dance, blind to the predator among them. Kiana pushed through, forcing herself to remain calm, to focus. She had to find him, had to make sure he was safe. Suddenly, the man's gaze flickered, and Kiana realized he was no longer focused solely on her. He turned sharply, scanning the crowd as though something had caught his attention. The monster of dread in her stomach twisted tighter. Was he waiting for someone? With renewed urgency, Kiana quickened her pace. She could almost feel the chilling pull of his presence behind her, like a hand on her shoulder. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of Julian across the room, his face a mirror of concern. "Julian!" she shouted again, but this time, it was more of a plea. He looked torn, glancing between her and the figure who now stood motionless, like a statue cast in shadows. Kiana waved frantically, a desperate lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. The moment his eyes met hers, the world around them faded, the noise, the vibrant colors, everything but the two of them. But before she could break free and reach him, the figure surged forward, cutting through the crowd with predatory speed. Panic surged through her veins. "No!" she gasped, slipping further into the throng as she fumbled her way around the bodies, dodging swirls of laughter and carefree spirits. His footsteps echoed in her ears, quick and calculated. Distracted by her path, she stumbled, colliding with a passerby who shot her an irritated look. Breathless, Kiana steadied herself and pressed on, her determination ignited. Behind her, Julian was fighting through the crowd, his eyes locked on hers, but the distance between them stretched like an endless chasm. The closer she came to the exit, the more she could feel the figure gaining on her, a crushing weight of inevitability pressing against her back. Suddenly, she burst outside into the cool night air, gasping as she tried to orient herself. The music faded along with her fear, and for a split second, there was just the sound of her breath and her racing heart. Then she felt it. A breath on her neck, a cold whisper that sent a shiver down her spine. She turned around, and there he stood, inches away, his grin now replaced with something darker, more sinister. "I've been looking for you," he said, the words laced with a mocking undertone that sent ice coursing through her veins. "Who are you?" Kiera managed to stammer, the courage in her voice cracking as fear swallowed her mind. His smile widened. "You'll find out soon enough. I promise you that." As he stepped closer, she glanced back down the street. Julian was almost there, but time felt suspended, every second stretching like the shadows creeping closer. Kiera stepped back, adrenaline surging. What had started as a night of exhilaration had turned into a nightmare. Who was this man? What did he want from her? And just as the lights of the club dimmed behind her, her feet frozen to the pavement, she heard his final words, a threat whispered in the thick air, echoing through the darkness. "The night is still young, and so are the secrets that will come to light." Kiera's heart raced as her grip on reality started to slip away. Was she ready to face what lay ahead? Or was she walking from one shadow straight into another? Kiera's breath quickened, her instincts screaming at her to run. The man loomed closer, a dark figure framed by the glow of distant streetlights. Panic clawed at her throat, but her gaze darted back to Julian. He was almost there, his determined strides pushing through the remnants of the crowd. She needed to move. "No!" she shouted, but whether it was to him or to herself, she couldn't tell. Her feet felt heavy as dread settled in. The closeness of the stranger felt like a noose tightening around her neck. "Let us have some fun, Kiera," he drawled, an edge of malicious delight in his voice that set her heart racing wildly. She turned, bolting down the alley to her left, hoping to lose him in the dimly lit streets. The echo of her footsteps bounced off the brick walls, each sound amplifying her fear. She could hear the scuff of his shoes behind her, relentless and determined. "Why are you doing this?" she gasped, the truth of her fear igniting a fire inside her. "What do you want?" "Just a little dance, darling. Just a little dance." His sing-song tone echoed in her ears, each word dripping with menace. Kiera rounded another corner, and the familiar surroundings of her neighborhood filled her with an urgent longing for safety. She could see the faint light of her apartment building ahead. All she needed was to get inside, to lock the door, to be safe again. "Julian!" she cried again, her voice cracking under the pressure. If only she could give him one clear direction where to find her. But he was stuck behind a red light, the traffic slow as he strained to look down the street. Time slowed as she sprinted toward her building, adrenaline pumping through her veins, but the figure behind her was gaining ground. With a final burst of speed, she reached her door and fumbled with her keys. The cold metal felt foreign in her trembling hands. She didn't dare look back. She could feel his presence creeping, closing in. "Let me in! Let me in!" she whispered frantically, stumbling on the last step before shoving the key into the lock. The door clicked open, and she darted inside, slamming it shut behind her. Her heart thundered in her chest as she leaned against the wooden panel, trying to catch her breath. For a moment, the relentless noise of the world outside faded into an eerie silence. She listened, heart pounding, straining to hear anything through the door. The fear pulsing through her was palpable. This was no ordinary pursuit. Then, a soft thud against the door froze her in place. Kiera pressed her back against the wall, clutching the edge of the frame. Was it him? She glanced at the peephole, her breath hitching. Nothing moved. Just shadows dancing under the hallway light. Footsteps echoed in the distance, and she strained to listen as they moved away. Would he give up? Or was he just playing with her? Taking a shaky breath, Kiera felt the urge to check the window. She edged toward it, her mind racing with possibilities. What would she see? Would Julian be searching for her, or had he lost her in the chaos? As she peeked through the curtains, horror clawed at her gut. The street below was empty, but the figure lurked just around the corner, a dark silhouette awaiting the moment she would reveal herself. Her pulse pounded in her ears, as fear mingled with the realization that the night felt far from over. "Why won't you just go away?" she whispered to herself, panic rising once more. And then she heard a drumming sound, a rhythmic tapping, almost musical. Kiera turned slowly, her heart soaring for just a fraction of a second before it plummeted. Was it him again? Or a different danger altogether? The tapping grew louder, more urgent. The shadows danced as she backed away, instinct screaming to hide. What if this was only the beginning of her nightmare? But just as her mind spiraled into chaos, a militant knock shattered the night. A voice boomed from the other side, "Kiera. Open up, it's Julian." Relief surged, flooding her veins, but hesitation gripped her heart. What if the figure had already claimed her life, and now he was leading Julian to an even darker fate? "Julian," she breathed, torn between safety and the beckoning of love. She stood frozen at the door, the weight of her choices heavy. Would she let him in, or were they both about to be caught in a horrifying game they could never escape? Kiana's hands trembled as she stood at the door, torn between the promise of safety and the dread that loomed behind her. "Julian," she whispered again, the sound barely escaping her throat. The knocking persisted, more insistent now, each thud like a siren pulling her closer to hope. "Kiera, please! I need you to open the door." His voice was filled with urgency, mixing with the frantic beat of her heart. Did she dare risk it? A glance at the peephole confirmed what she feared. The dark shape outside shifted slightly. What if it wasn't Julian? What if the monster was already playing his cruel game? But then, the thought of being alone crushed her more than the stranger ever could. "Hold on," she called out, her voice stronger now as she approached the door, the fear still coiling within her like a snake ready to strike. She unlocked the door in a quick, deliberate motion, but paused just before pulling it open. Her heart raced as the doorknob turned beneath her grip. In the brief silence, she heard the shuffling of footsteps, not Julian's, but someone as familiar, drawing closer. "Open the door." Julian's voice rang with a determination that cut through her fear. She swung the door wide, the weight of her decision crashing in waves as light spilled into the dim hallway. Julian stood there, breathless, his eyes wide with concern and something darker beneath. "Kiera, are you okay?" She quickly stepped aside, the sight of him grounding her chaotic thoughts. Already, she felt a sense of safety just being near him, but the menace still loomed in the shadows. "We need to go now." He took a step in, glancing over his shoulder, his expression shifting. "What happened?" "I saw you running, not here." She stammered, panic flooding back as she remembered the figure lurking around just outside. She yanked Julian inside and slammed the door shut, locking it again with a frantic click. Not waiting to breathe, she pressed her back against the wood, heart hammering like a drum. "What do you mean? Who's after you?" But before Kiera could respond, the haunting rhythm of that tapping returned. It echoed off the walls with a sickening familiarity, sending another wave of terror through her. Julian stiffened, his body tense. "What is that?" "Kiera, what is going on?" "It's him. I think he is right outside." Her words faltered as the tapping grew louder, more aggressive, a cruel mockery of a dance between fear and impending doom. Julian's eyes darted around the small room before settling back on her, a mix of resolve and dread painted on his face. "We need to find somewhere safe. We can't just stay here." "No!" she gasped, the weight of his words crushing her resolve. "What if he follows us?" A sudden violent knock rattled the door, and Kiera jumped, adrenaline surging. The unmistakable sing-song voice that had haunted her was there, slithering through the cracks of her sanity. "Let us keep dancing, Kiera." The night is just getting started. Her breath caught again as Julian's grip tightened around her wrist, his muscles tense with protective instinct. We're not giving up. Not now. He turned away from her briefly, scanning the small apartment for a way out, but all Kiera could do was watch the door, heart racing as that tapping turned to banging, more insistent with each beat. "Do you have a plan?" she shouted, trying to pierce through the pounding on the door and her own rising dread. "I do, but we need to move now." He pointed toward the tiny kitchen at the far end. "There's a fire escape. If we can get to it, we can lose him in the alleys." "Okay." The thought of escape ignited a flicker of hope, but still, that rhythmic knocking continued, the rhythm pounding in her skull as if it were a clock counting down to something she dreaded. Before they made it to the kitchen, another loud thud seemed to shake the entire frame of the apartment. "Go!" she urged, but something inside her stopped her. She had to ask, had to know. "Julian, what if we never nothing is going to happen to us?" "I promise," he said fiercely. "Just trust me. We'll figure it out together." But the night was still young, filled with unspeakable terrors and secrets yet unfurled. As they rushed across the room, reality struck Kiera like a bolt of lightning. What if the dance they were about to partake in was just about fleeing? What if it was merely the beginning of a much darker rhythm, one that would test them both in ways they could never expect? "Move!" Julian shouted, forcing her toward the kitchen. And as they rushed toward what they hoped would be safety, another voice cut through the chaos. "You can't run forever, Kiera." The night was far from over, and the dance was only just beginning. Kiera pushed through the doorway to the kitchen, her breath hitching as the darkness seemed to throb with a life of its own. The banging on the door escalated, punctuated by that twisted voice echoing in her mind, a taunting refrain that wouldn't let her escape. "Now, Kiera! Now!" Julian urged, yanking her further inside. She'd barely registered the clutter of pots and pans, only the urgency of their lives hanging in the balance. She fumbled past the outdated microwave and a pile of dirty dishes, focusing on the window that remained cracked open like a desperate plea for freedom. Julian knelt beside it, pushing it upward with a grunt. "Help me with this. Why don't we just do it?" His voice was firm, adrenaline sharpening his tone. She gritted her teeth and climbed on the countertop, working with him to hoist the frame higher. Outside, the cool night air called to her, a brief relief from the chaos. But before they could squeeze through, another deafening crack sent chills racing down her spine. The door splintered against the force of another pounding blow. Kiera turned wide-eyed to Julian. "He is coming in. Go!" he shouted as he pushed her through the window, his hands trembling with urgency. She landed hard on the fire escape, catching herself just in time to avoid tumbling down the rusted stairs. "Julian!" She reached back, hand extended for him, but he hesitated, glancing between her and the door that was now shaking percussively, almost rhythmically as if the monster was drumming his own sinister beat. "I can't let him in," Julian said, planting his feet firmly. "I'll hold him off." "No, you can't!" Kiera screamed, panic flooding her chest. "You'll die. Listen to me," he shouted, his jaw clenched with fierce determination. "You need to get out of here. I'll buy you time. Go!" With tears blurring her vision, she shook her head furiously. "Don't be a hero. Please!" But as he turned back to the door, she felt the unmistakable pull of the unknown, a desperate need to survive. The night stretched on, thick with uncertainty. "I want to let him take you." Julian's voice faded beneath another crash, promising despair and darkness. The fire escape creaked under her weight, the metal cold and unforgiving. Kiera looked down at the street, where shadows danced under the flickering lampposts. They were here, illuminating the path of her escape, but she would have to make a choice: trust that Julian could keep the darkness at bay or turn back and fight alongside him. Her heart raced, conflicting emotions swirling in her head. But that fleeting moment of doubt shattered into clarity. She couldn't leave him behind. Not like this. Not ever. "Julian!" she cried, finding her voice again, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. "I'm coming back for you." As Kiera dashed back into the apartment, she barely registered the sound of the door bursting open. She felt a rush of wind against her skin, and the unmistakable chill of dread clawing at her back. Inside, the air was thick with a metallic smell like rust, every shadow shifting ominously as if alive. And then she heard the other voice, a low, menacing growl, intermingled with Julian's frantic cries. "Stop this, Kiera!" But she was already moving, fueled by hope and fear intertwined. The dance had changed, and now she faced the monster lurking within the very walls that once felt like safety. "Hold on!" she screamed, and with every step, she fought against the rhythm of the night. Moving toward the darkness, what lay ahead was a question of fate woven with danger yet laced with purpose. Each heartbeat was a countdown, each breath a silent prayer. Would she find Julian in time, or was the monster now claiming him as part of its wicked waltz? What Kiera didn't realize was that the true dance, one of desperation and hope, was about to begin in a way that no one could anticipate. The shadows flickered under a dim light, casting grotesque shapes across the walls of the familiar apartment. Kiera's breaths came in sharp gasps, raw panic clawing at her throat. She had turned back into a nightmare, drawn to the chaos with a purpose that blazed brighter than her fear. The air was thick with tension, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting. "Julian!" Panic surged through her like a live wire. She darted into the living room, her heart pounding, feet barely touching the ground. The energy felt charged, electric, alive. She could hear him, a frantic mix of sounds, the growl of the creature thickening the air with dread. "Stay back." Julian's voice was hoarse, strained as though he was fighting back against the encroaching darkness. "Kiera, don't!" But Kiera didn't hesitate. She could barely make out the form looming over him, tall and grotesque. Its mouth twisted into a smile that shouldn't belong on any living being, stretching wider and revealing sharp, glistening teeth. "Get away from him!" she screamed, urgency hardening her tone. She caught sight of a kitchen knife glinting on the counter as she passed, reaching for it just as adrenaline surged through her veins. The creature whipped around, its eyes flashing with an otherworldly hunger. Kiera's heart pounded in terror and anger. She would not let it take Julian. With the knife gripped tightly in her trembling hand, she moved forward, narrowing the space between them. "Stay back!" Julian shouted again, more desperate this time. "You can't fight it, Kiera." "I'm not leaving you," she cried, trembling, but unyielding. She glanced toward Julian, seeing the shadows dance reflected in his frightened eyes. The monster drew closer, its breath hot and heavy, sending a chill down her spine. She had fought too hard to surrender now. As it leapt towards her, she hurled the knife. Time slowed. The blade spun through the air, catching the light, the hope clinging to it like a lifeline. She watched it sink into the creature's shoulder with a sickening thud. It recoiled, howling in agony, the sound reverberating in Kiera's chest. "Run!" Julian shouted, pulling himself up. He stumbled slightly, eyes full of fierce determination. "Get out of here!" But the monster wasn't finished. It turned its wrathfully towards Kiera, anger swirling like a storm. The heat from it felt like fire against her skin, and that smile twisted into something darker, something more sinister. Kiera couldn't breathe. She grabbed Julian's hand, desperation weaving a fabric of hope. Together they bolted toward the staircase, where the window was no longer an option. "Go! Keep moving!" Julian's words surged through her, igniting a fire in her spirit. They sprinted up the stairs, each step echoing back to their fears, drowning them in urgency. The stench of the creature lingered in the air, a thick reminder of the horror chasing them. She could hear it behind them, its growls transforming into a primal hunt, anger crackling through the air like static electricity. "Almost there," Julian shouted, leading the way. They burst onto the roof, night's chill slashing at their faces. Below, the city lights glimmered like stars fallen from the sky, but above them loomed a dark silhouette, windows turned into hollow eyes watching with bated breath. "Look out!" Kiera yelled, yanking Julian away as the monster crested the stairs, claws scraping the metal. They scrambled toward the edge, back against the wall, the city falling away beneath their feet. Kiera felt the weight of the danger press down on her, suffocating. "Do you see that?" Julian pointed towards a narrow ledge. "We can," but the creature lunged for them, its fangs glistening with menace. "Now!" Kiera shouted, her voice strong and fierce, their last chance hanging by a thread. As they jumped, the world fell away, and she didn't know if they would land safely or turn into shadows in the night. The dance of survival continued, and every moment would count. What she didn't expect was the throbbing pulse of light from above as they descended, and the world around them began to twist in unimaginable ways. The city fell away in a rush of chaos as Kiera and Julian leapt from the rooftop. Time whispered around them, each heartbeat echoing as they soared toward uncertainty. The air rushed past like a scream, a cacophony of fear mingled with adrenaline. Then they landed hard on a balcony below, the impact jarring them to the core. Kiera quickly pushed herself upright, glancing at Julian to see if he was hurt. "Are you okay?" she gasped, breathless, worry painting her voice. "Yeah," he managed, wincing slightly but nodding. "We need to keep moving." They scrambled to their feet, adrenaline powering them forward. The relentless presence of the creature hung over them like a storm cloud, and with each passing second, Kiera could feel its breath on the back of her neck. They darted through the shadows of the balcony, racing toward the stairwell that promised a chance of safety. As they hurried down, the echoes of the night vibrated, laughter blurred with distant sirens, as if life continued to flow unbothered by the horror that chased them. Kiera's heart raced, not just from fear, but from determination. They couldn't stop now. This was a choice they had made together. "Keep going," Julian whispered urgently, pressing ahead, determination fueling each stride. She followed, each step a defiance against the darkness that lurked behind them, waiting to ensnare them back in its ghastly grip. Bursting into an empty hallway, her eyes were drawn to the emergency exit door, a beacon amidst uncertainty. Hope surged within her. They were so close, just a few more steps. "There!" she cried, pointing toward the door, as they sprinted ahead, almost crashing through it. With a frantic shove, they tumbled down the metal stairs that would lead them to safety. But as they reached the ground floor, Kiera glanced back and froze. The creature's silhouette cast a long shadow, its haunting presence filling the dim corridor, hunting them with the fervor of a predator closing in on its prey. "Go!" Julian yelled, grabbing her arm and pulling her forward. They raced through the exit and burst outside, practically tumbling onto the sidewalk. The night was alive with noise, but the threatening figure still loomed in the background, teeth bared, eyes filled with a primal desire for chaos. Kiera's world narrowed. "Where to?" she asked, panic rising again. "Down the street. Into the park." Julian pointed, urgency driving him as he pulled her along, navigating the vibrant chaos around them. She could feel their breaths mingling in the cool night air, heartbeats sharing the rhythm of their fight for survival. Once they reached the park, the shadows seemed to breathe around them, but the wildness of the night softened here. The sounds of laughter were replaced by crickets chirping, life still thriving against the encroaching darkness. "This way." Julian urged, darting past trees bathed in moonlight. Kiana's mind raced with thoughts of what that night had morphed into. This was supposed to be a chance, a moment filled with light, but darkness had suffocated the beauty. Still, she also felt something else, a growing strength in her chest, the knowledge that they had faced this nightmare together. Then it happened. A flash of movement disturbed the peace. The creature burst into the park, the same eerily joyous, sing-song voice echoing through the trees. "I told you, Kiana. You can't escape. Let us keep dancing." Panic erupted again as Kiana looked at Julian. We can't keep running." "Then we fight it," he shouted, surprising her. "Fight it?" "Yes." His eyes were fierce and focused, a light igniting in their depths. Together. She felt the weight of his resolve. Kiana took a deep breath, heart pounding with new purpose. This was no longer about running into shadows. It was about reclaiming her light. "What do we do?" Kiana asked, fear still coiling but mixed now with determination. "Find something to defend ourselves. Use the park. It's big. We can use it against him." Kiana nodded, scanning their surroundings. Every bench, every hedge became a part of an improvised battle plan. A plan to wrestle control back from the grips of darkness. The creature approached them, wild laughter threatening to tear through the night. "You think you can beat me? You're wrong." Kiana clenched her fists. "We are not afraid of you," she shouted, stepping forward, her voice mingling with Julian's, a united front against the chaos. "What is wrong is I am done dancing to your tune," Julian interjected, grabbing a thick branch from the ground, positioning them side by side, a line drawn in the sand. The creature hesitated, surprise faltering its cruel confidence. In that moment, Kiana felt an intense surge of empowerment. She grabbed a rock, ready to stand her ground. "Now!" Kiana shouted, charging forward with Julian right beside her. Together, they flung the makeshift weapons toward the creature, their coordinated attack catching it off guard. Surprise shifted into rage as it stumbled back, its sharp fangs bared, but they pushed on with ferocity, each pulse of adrenaline urging them forward. "Together. We can do this!" They yelled in unison, fear transforming into strength and rage. Words of betrayal echoed back through the night, swirls of doubt dissipating with each stand they took. The strength of their unity bore down on the creature like a tempest, the embodiment of their fears crumbling with every roar. Kiana felt light, the shadows starting to recede. The rhythm of that dreadful night was changing. They were now the ones leading the dance. With one final surge, they took a united stance, pushing the creature back until it finally lost its grip on the night around them. The shadows shrank, a light breaking through, illuminating the darkest corners where once its presence loomed. Panting, Kiana and Julian stood together, close in the aftermath of chaos. Hand in hand, they had confronted the darkness and emerged victorious. Slowly, the world around them quieted, the tension dissolving into soft whispers of the wind, leaving behind echoes of courage and the bonds formed through fear. "This is our moment," Kiana murmured, glancing up at Julian, relief flooding through her. "We did it," he replied, a smile breaking over his face, warmth radiating between them. Under the cloak of night, stars began to twinkle, unveiling a world waiting to be danced upon, not with the shadows of fear, but with the rays of hope, strength, and unshakable friendship. Their journey had transformed them, guided by a single truth: they were never alone, and the light they carried within them was stronger than any darkness that dared cross their path. As they walked away from that haunted night, laughter rang out, vibrant against the stillness of the park, signaling a promise of new beginnings. Kiana realized this would be a chapter they would always remember, a testament to their resilience, courage, and the transformative power of connection. But now, as they stepped into the dawn, something in Kiana stirred a yearning for the next challenge, the next dance. And she knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together, and the rhythm of their lives would always find a beat. This is the moment you need to take action. If you loved how Kiana and Julian took control of their night, then you need to subscribe immediately to the channel, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and show your support for the journey we've just shared. And don't forget to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Let us know what you think about Kiana's transformation, and what could possibly come next. This is your chance. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and be part of our vibrant community. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.